Hi everybody, my name is Bill Free and I'm the Rail Director from CECA, and welcome to this CECA Southern event with the main contractor and their key subcontractors working on the central section of HS2. This isn't the picture I put up here isn't a picture of HS2, it's a picture of the high-speed line in the northwest of France, which was built by Eiffage, and I visited many years ago as part of the original effort at setting up this joint venture. So I'm very pleased to see them all set up and running, and it's nice to see something happening. So can we move on to the next slide, please, Leone? So I think the key points to note here is the joint venture at the top is Eiffage, Kia, Ferrovial, BAM Nuttall, JV. These are all CECA members, as are the company, well, most of the companies who are also presenting, who are their key subcontractors. So it's worth noting that I know many of you work for smaller companies and are slightly nervous about working as subcontractors, but a sort of big point to note here is that HS2, as the main ultimate client, it's an ambitious project. There's a lot of future phases still to award, and there's a lot going on at the moment. They have fair payment clauses in place that are flowed down through the supply chain. They have targets to get more SMEs involved in the project. They have very clear requirements for sustainability and safety that people will explain to you. We had a similar event a month or two ago with the Balfour BT Vancy joint venture, who are doing the sort of Midlands section of HS2. And CECA Southern are planning further events with the other two contractors working further south, who also have requirements for subcontractors. One thing that's worth bearing in mind, I think, and the picture I had up earlier probably emphasizes this, is that at this stage, this is much more of a general civils project laid out as a linear project than a sort of railway as we usually think about it. The tolerances are higher than most other forms of linear project because the high-speed trains need a very smooth and straight ride, but this is mostly a civils project. So at this point, I'll hand over, sorry, two things to say. We're recording this event, and please can you all, if you're not presenting, please mute your microphones and turn your cameras off, and that'll give all the sort of the bandwidth the best chance of getting the presentation over to us. So I'll now hand over to Paul Paddock from the EKFB joint venture. Thank you.
Morning, Bill. Thank you. Thanks for that introduction, and welcome everyone to the call this morning. As Bill mentioned, my name is Paul Paddock, and I'm head of procurement and supply chain for EKFB. I'll be supported on the call today by Chris Reed, who's senior supply chain manager for EKFB, and he'll be taking you through some of our onboarding processes and our methods in which we use to engage with the supply chain. Okay, so that's my mugshot there for you all. I'm delighted to see, and that's Chris's handsome face there as well. So just so you know what we look like. So a little bit about EKFB and who we are. Firstly, our sort of procurement and supply chain vision. Everyone needs a vision these days, don't they? So to deliver safe, inclusive and sustainable value for money solutions through facilitating collaborative, best-in-class procurement and supply chain management across the HS2 programme of works. So, you know, what does that mean? Sort of talk is cheap, so it's all very well and good having a vision, but how are we looking to realise that vision? And you know, if I can just break down some sort of key words on that slide there. Safety for EKFB is sort of number one priority. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it absolutely is. It's always at the forefront of agendas. And how does that sort of resonate with the procurement and supply chain team? Well, safe to us means having an accredited and a safe supply chain. So we've got a robust onboarding procedure. We're aligned to the sort of common assessment standard, and all our supply chain have to meet minimum standards to be able to work on the site, and that's obviously package size dependent, and risk profile as well. Inclusive, obviously, EDI, very high profile these days within construction and wider society. Inclusive to us means opportunities for all, and actually, how can we actively encourage under-resourced suppliers and underrepresented suppliers to bid for work. And we were delighted as a JV to win the CIPS award, the Chartered Institute of Purchasing and Supply, for developing a diverse supplier base last year, which really was testament to the work that Chris Reed, who will be presenting shortly, and the rest of the team have done in that area. Value for money. Again, this is an area that is absolutely part of our procurement strategy and embedded in our day-to-day sort of work, what we do. Looking at all our procurement decisions are based on a balanced scorecard, so consider the quality elements across key sections such as environment, health and safety, methodology of delivery, etc., as well as obviously commercial considerations. And by doing that, we're really looking to drive out value as opposed to sort of lowest cost at all opportunities. And collaborative best-in-class procurement or collaboration. Again, what does that mean to us? Well, we'll come on in a second. I'm delighted that 4 of our strategic partners are joining us presentation today. We work collaboratively with 9 strategic partners over the past 2 years, I suppose, probably longer than that, actually, going back to ECI, which was probably 3.5 years ago. Wow, how does time flies? 3.5 years ago, and as part of our strategy, procurement and supply chain strategy, we selected strategic partners based on sort of capacity risk, that we felt that there was a strategic need for them to bring them into the project. So they worked with us through the ECI phase, developing design, developing target cost, and we're now getting those guys into contracts. So we've got a really strong team across the joint venture, both from EKFB and our supply chain partners. So who is EKFB? Who are EKFB? Probably don't need to tell you too much about the individual companies that make up the joint venture. I know there's representatives from most of those companies on this call anyway, but just quick headlines. Eiffage, sort of 17 billion euro turnover company. Really haven't operated too much in the UK market before starting work on HS2, but very much see HS2 as being a catalyst to future projects within the UK. Kier, I'm sure need no introduction, obviously a long-established UK contractor, and like Eiffage have been part of HS2, the central section project from day one. Ferrovial, Spanish contractor, again, who have got a track record of working in the UK, and indeed were already on HS2 as part of the enabling works. And BAM, again, a very reputable UK contractor, who were also on the enabling works. And Ferrovial and BAM, as I'm sure many of you know, joined the JV sort of probably about this time last year, probably April last year, when we entered stage 2. So it's been it's been quite a fluid joint venture. From originally it started with Korean Eiffage and Kier, then changed to Eiffage and Kier, and then Ferrovial and BAM have joined it. But we feel it's a really strong joint venture. So moving on to our scope and what the project looks like, you're probably really going to struggle to read that slide, but we'll distribute the slides, I think, after this session, so you can probably get more detail from that after this session. But what that slide shows is basically the sort of topography of the project of EKFB's project C23. It's basically an 80-kilometre stretch which goes from Great Missenden in the south, where a Lions contract finishes, up to Southam in the north, which is just sort of south of Leamington Spa, which is where BBV's contract commences in the north. So 80 kilometres of civil engineering, heavy civil engineering through a pretty sort of dense rural environment, and the delivery strategy I've mentioned is very much a one in which our supply chain are front and centre of that, and the project is split into 5 sections. Going from the south, we've got the NCA, which is the North Chilterns area. Next, we move on to AA, which is Aylesbury area, and then we've got Calvert in the middle of the project, and then moving north, we've got T to G, which is Twyford to Greatworth, and finally the final section, which is the biggest section, which you'll see on the left-hand side in the red, is G2S, which is Greatworth to Southam. And down the bottom of that slide, you might just about be able to make out we've got our strategic partners and detailed in how they're supporting our works. So from the left, Walters are carrying out the earthworks for Greatworth to Southam on the north part of the job, and it's obviously without knowing the precise numbers, I'm sure Walters will come on to that, but sort of 10 million cube of spoil to be excavated and moved there. In the central section, we've got Buckingham's doing a discrete section of about 5 kilometres of civils work in Calvert, which is heavily it's an area which has got lots of sort of different stakeholders to manage, and lots of bridges and viaducts, and it's a pretty complex set of works. And we've brought Buckingham's in as a strategic partner there to manage that and deliver that in their own under their own steam. Then to the south, we've got NCA, AA, and part of Calvert South. Blackwells are delivering the earthworks there. Again, that's a very sizable order. And finally, stated on the slide is Keller Bauer, who are our strategic partner for, or Bauer Keller, probably should say. I always get that the wrong way around. Bauer Keller, who are our strategic partner for piling and foundations works across the program of work. So, we've got a really strong offering from our supply chain there that's supporting the project. Every one of those contracts is in excess of £90 million in value. So it gives you an idea of the resilience that's being taken out of the sort of need to self-deliver and brought into the supply chain by having those strategic partners as part of our strategy. Okay, so moving on, just sort of headline scope. Like I said, there's 80 kilometres of high-speed line to be delivered. And as Bill says, that is sort of everything up to where the preparing for the sort of track to be laid, etc. So we're not doing any rail works at all. It's all civil engineering works, but there's obviously massive elements of civils and also sort of diversions, etc. along the route. 75 overbridges to be erected. 5 kilometres of something called green tunnels, which is unique to EKFB and our delivery strategy. This is a design technology that was brought in from Eiffage and the work they did in France. It's a sort of cut and cover tunnel, but some of these, I think the longest one is over 3 kilometres in length, and so effectively they'll be backfilled, and it won't look like there's anything there when we're long gone from the project. So some really precast section construction, obviously off-site, cuts down massively on on-site labour, health and safety risk, etc. So that's really something we're proud of on the project. Just numbers are sort of phenomenal. 330 hectares of landscape planting, 17 viaducts to be launched and erected, and sort of 30 million cubic meters of excavation to be cut and filled, and etc. And obviously our supply chain partners, Blackwells and Walters, are on the call as front and centre of us delivering that. Final slide from me, I think, is just around our programme. Just sort of some headline dates there, really. Let's take us through to the completion sort of the works. I think scheduled sometime in 2025. So there's a lot, as you would think, for a project which is 80 kilometres in length and sort of over 2 billion in value. There's an incredible amount of interfaces to manage on the program, and also from a sort of stakeholder management perspective, and the undertakings and assurances, etc., are significant on the project. So that's just an overview really of our program. So what I'd like to do now, I'd like to hand over to Chris Reed, who's our senior supply chain manager, and he'll talk you through our sort of onboarding and supply chain strategy.
Thank you, Paul. I'll attempt to take control of the slides. Have they disappeared?
I think the slides have disappeared, yes. Maybe we press stop presenting. Let me just reload them.
Sorry, I pressed stop presenting, Leon.
Right.
Is that mine? Chris knows you should never let me near anything IT related.
Absolutely.
I'll just forward this once they're loaded. I'll forward them on to where we left it, and then I'll let you take control, Chris.
Thank you.
It's about halfway through. It's obviously a big slide deck.
No problem. Well, just before we get the slides, I guess, yeah, good morning, everybody. I guess I just wanted to talk you through a few slides and build on some of the points that Paul's already raised through his first half of the presentation, and focusing really around how you guys within the supply chain can ready yourselves to bid for opportunities, either directly with EKFB or within our sort of tier one supply chain, which is part of the reason we've got our strategic partners on the call today, to give you a bit of better insight into how you engage with them. But yeah, we just want to give you a feel for our sort of assurance standards on the project, and in terms of our procurement, how you can, I guess, have a think about and how you articulate your sort of whole life value propositions, because ultimately that's how best to that's how you'll best prepare yourselves to win works on the project. So okay, so I can take control now, Leon?
Yes, please, Chris.
It's whirring a lot there, Mike.
Okay. So yeah, so I guess this first slide really is just to sort of show really that really the opportunities direct with EKFB, the sort of tip of the iceberg. I guess there's we've done a lot of procurement. We've still got a lot of procurement to deliver. So there's a huge amount of opportunity there. But if you feel that those opportunities might be too big for you to take on as a business, or too risky, there will be a huge amount of opportunity within our within the sub tiers of our supply chain, and we are putting onus on our sort of tier ones to make commitments to engage in SMEs and things, and making those opportunities visible through the same platforms that we're obligated to use, such as Compete for. So in terms of package progress, these are some of the packages that we've been procuring and the sorts of values thresholds that they sit within. So there's a whole plethora of different opportunities here that might suit your businesses. So hopefully that'll give you a flavour for the sorts of ranges they are and what's to come. And again, just emphasising that supply chain opportunity is will filter throughout the supply chain. So there's some good visuals here of the sorts of people you can go and start engaging in and seeing where you might fit into the overall HS2 picture. So in terms of our shopping list, we've got a whole range of things from indirect and direct procurement, whether it's services that are being delivered on our sites to keep our workforce going in terms of food and catering, temporary accommodation, sort of site services that are needed, and obviously the more direct stuff that's going on in terms of the construction delivery itself. So again, a whole range of things, just to show that there is a sort of a wide, diverse range of opportunity there. Hopefully that will sort of identify where you might fit in. So in terms of getting ready to bid for works, one of the key kind of toolkits that we use and we hope that our supply chain will be using is a balanced scorecard approach, which ultimately enables you to sort of articulate your value proposition. So the best sort of price and qualitative opportunity there. So I guess in terms of what you can do to think about that is just what sort of best practice you can bring to the job in terms of delivery. So what sort of best practice in delivery and methodologies you can bring in terms of safe delivery, in terms of methodology, to provide the most sort of productive, innovative approach, but also what sort of commitments you can make in terms of HS2's aspirations, legacy aspirations, in terms of skills and employment, how many apprentices you can bring to the job, how much local employment you can deliver for us. So we've developed a very sort of objective, transparent, balanced scorecard tool which goes out with all of our major tenders, and that very clearly defines sort of the scoring criteria that you need to meet, so that ultimately you can make tangible commitments through your bid, and you'll know sort of where you sit. So we hope that sort of very open, transparent approach to making that scoring criteria and rationale available to you will give you the best chance you can get to scoring high and winning works. Okay, so another important thing that we're doing within EKFB is our commitment to upskilling and developing the supply chain, certainly trying to help nurture SMEs. And we've recently partnered with the Supply Chain Sustainability School, we're currently developing a whole sort of suite of tools where we can monitor and report on the sort of sustainability targets that we're all delivering throughout our supply chain, and that will be a cloud-based platform that our supply chain will need to gain access to and report their sort of, whether it's carbon metrics, waste metrics and things to us, so we can get a program-wide picture of how we're delivering these legacy targets. And what that will do is enable us to develop a picture of where there might be a need for our supply chain to develop further. So it will almost sort of shape the learning pathways that we want to then go out and deliver with the supply chain school. So if we recognise that there's a sort of gap in terms of delivering circular economy and using recycled materials, for example, then we can go and start doing some targeted workshops and things with the supply chain school and our supply chain. to help bring everybody up to the right sort of level where we want to be. So that's some really positive stuff that's going on. And I guess in terms of engaging with us, we've set up we partnered with Compete4, which is, I hope you're all familiar with Compete4 and you're already registered, but we've set up a Compete4 partnership site, which is a bit of a landing page and signposting facility for us. So I recommend that you all go and visit our Compete4 site, and we're currently refreshing that to give you some information on what our assurance standards are. So that's construction line gold or other equivalent common assessment standard, verification to work directly with EKFB. Within our sub-tier supply chain, it's a minimum of construction line silver. So all that information is available to you there. We're also working to provide a bit of a pipeline of our tender opportunities and also a table of awards. So once we've awarded contracts within our tier ones, there'll be an updated table there that will sort of show you who you need to go and speak to gain opportunities from themselves. But there's also lots of other information about our balanced scorecard and other sort of places you can get useful information on readying yourself for HS2. So yeah, so I hope that will all be of interest to you, and obviously, yeah, once our opportunities are all posted on Compete4, so you'll be able to track our live tenders through the platform as well. Okay, so I think that's the end of our slides, and I think we're on time to move on to a bit of Q&A before we move on to the partner presentations.
So thank you very much, Chris and Paul. Are there any questions at this stage, or we could move on and do a combined Q&A at the end? So we have quite a bit to get through here, one way or another. Are there any pressing questions at this point? You can raise the big yellow hand. I'll take that as a no then. So I think let's press on with the talks from the other partners, and then we'll have one big Q&A at the end. So it's Andrew next. Over to you, Andrew.
Good morning, I'm Andrew Davison. I'm the project director for Bauer-Kalle, and as Chris and Paul have mentioned, we're strategic partners to deliver the piling and geotechnical works on C2 and C3. So a bit about Bauer-Kalle. We are a 50-50 joint venture, unincorporated, and Bauer Technologies, they've been in the UK now for around 10-15 years. They have a turnover, it's very project driven, have a turnover between sort of 15 to 40 million pounds per year in the UK, and then globally Bauer Group turns over around 500 million. Keller in the UK is between a 60 and 100 million pound business, generally at 60 million to 65. This year we're looking at doing near 100 million via the work on HS2 through C2, 3, C1 and also S1, S2, which we're involved with. And Keller Group globally turns over around £2 billion per year. I just thought it'd be useful to show people what a typical piling site looks like. So this is actually on C23. This is where East West Rail meets High Speed 2 in Calvert area. So you have a piling rig, which they cost around £2 million each, and range in size up to about 200 tons. This is one of the bigger machines that we've got, and it's currently on site now, piling away. Generally also have a telescopic crawler crane on all of our projects, just for general lifting to support the piling rig with lifting pile cages and tremie pipes. On this particular contract, we're also doing all our own spoil clearance. So we've got a 13-ton excavator, 9-ton dual view dumper, and we're also sourcing all our own concrete which is coming in via offsite for the moment. Just to give you an idea of the challenge of C23, there is quite a significant elevation change from the right-hand side being the south at Great Missenden through to the left-hand side of your screen, which is the north side at Southam. And we've got quite a big mix of ground conditions. We go through 7 distinct geologies. So we start with chalk in the south, progressing through into clays and mudstones and limestones as we progress further north. They all have their own little challenges. Chalk is generally quite weak, and when we install the piles as board piles, it can't support itself, so we have to use support fluid. So we have about 10 structures needing support fluid at the south. As we progress further north, the ground generally gets a little bit more competent, so we don't need to use support fluid for forming our piles. So we're able to use a segmental casing and then bore the piles out. And as we go further north into C3, we go through an awful lot of limestone, getting the piles down to depth, which is quite a challenge. So you'll notice the elevation change, which is then driving quite a lot of our scope. So we've the various viaducts, embankments and cuttings. Obviously a train traveling at 400 kilometers an hour can't follow that, otherwise it'd be quite a roller coaster ride. So this thing has to be leveled out somewhat. So there's quite a lot of piling and drainage work to do for us. Just to give you an idea of scope, we've got around 50,000 installations to do, totaling just over 500,000 kilometers. So we started last month, and our program runs through until sort of middle of 2024. We're using various techniques, which is being driven by the design and the ground conditions. So we have some CFA piling to do in the Calvert area, just under 3,000 CFA piles to install through Calvert and going through into around the Oxford Canal. Pressure relief drains, around 50,000 of these to install, which they sit under embankments where there's fill to be placed. So they're a small diameter sand-filled drain. So quite a lot of them to do. And then the bulk of our work, or the value of our work, is in the board piling, combination of wet piles and dry piles, i.e. wet being support fluid, dry being not. So approaching 3,000 of those and around 70,000 meters. We're going to be up to around 25 piling rigs in total, pretty much kicking in earnest from next year and going forwards. With our procurement, as Chris mentioned, we do all our procurement via Compete Form and using a balanced scorecard. So we're in the throes at the moment of getting our supply chain in place. Some headline numbers: 13 million pounds of ready-mix concrete. It's 125,000 cube that we need to source and place. Prefabricated pile reinforcement cages, around 13,000 tons and 13 million pounds. We bring in all the cages as shown on the right, prefabricated from offsite. All the piles are fully reinforced, and they're up to sort of 40-50 meters in length. So we splice the cages together. Telescopic crawler cranes, looking at around 15 of those for the moment. So it's quite a meaty package, around 2.5 million. Excavator and dumper, around a 3.5 million package for the 13 tonners and 9-ton dual views. And we're also procuring some other higher plants, and such as MEEPs. We're delivering all our own setting out. We have sorts of PPE consumables and some small tools. This is my final slide. We weren't given too long. One area which we yet to procure, which might be of more interest to those on the call, is we have around 2 kilometers of guide wall to install, which is a 1 meter deep, and these are sort of 500 mil wide on each side guide wall. What they're used for is for positional tolerance of piles, used on secant wall piling. So we're going to be going out for Compete 4 and the balance scorecard exercise on those probably the next 2 to 3 months, because the installation for those will commence next year. And the last one is we've got around 10 number support fluid slabs to install where we're doing the wet piling. So they're generally a 20 by 20 reinforced concrete slab, which we're designing, and up to sort of 200 mil thick. And then we then sit our support fluid, plant and equipment on top of those. So again, we're going out for Compete 4 and balance scorecards on those probably in the next month, because we've got our first installation to do this summer. And that's a brief tour of Bauerkeller. Thank you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name's Justin Downer. I'm the Assistant Project Director for Blackwell Earth Moving on the HS2 project. Let me get the right slide up. I'm joined by Jennifer Kirky, our Procurement Manager, who will join in a few slides' time to run through the procurement process and the procurement opportunities that are associated with our scope on this project. A brief company history. Blackwell was established back in 1956 by Chris Blackwell, and that was predominantly off the back of the major motorway building scheme and program that was prevalent at the time. Subsequently, we engaged in a wide range of civil engineering projects and developed our soil stabilisation activity. More recently, the company in 2016 was acquired by Hargreaves Services and steered us back really towards our traditional skill set of major earth moving. Our scope overview, we're happy now that, well, we're delighted actually that we've now signed the contract to provide the bulk earthworks to the southern part of the HS2 C2 contract, which is the northern portal of the Chiltern Tunnel as the tunnelling comes out the side of the Chiltern Hills, and that runs to Brackley, and the chainage is 47 to 77, approximately 30 kilometre stretch, divided into 3 geographical delivery sections, which is, as mentioned before, the North Calvert area, the Aylesbury area, and the Calvert South area. It's approximately 15 million cubic metres of earthworks over 4 to 5 years. And the picture just at the bottom left of that slide, we have been involved in various enabling works before the main contract, the most notable being this one, the heave trial, where we excavated approximately, I think it was about 200,000 cubic metres of material, so that advanced monitoring could be done on the heave characteristics of the soil. So that just gives you an understanding of what HS2, the cutting, would look like typically. Again, this map isn't brilliant. I think the slides you've seen previously, and you do get a copy of these slides afterwards, you can actually see in better detail, but this is the southern end of the section where we start at the Chiltern Tunnel, and then it runs up there to just South Calvert, which is just somewhere short of where the East-West Rail cuts across and interfaces with the HS2 works. So our mission for Blackwell Earth Moving is to be the specialist earthworks contractor of choice within UK infrastructure, and we want to be responsible, sharing ownership and accountability for project outcomes. We want to be respectful. We want to be relentless and adopting a high energy delivery focused approach throughout the life cycle of the project without falter. And we want to be resilient, ensuring that we persevere when challenges and obstacles arise, which there will be numerous challenges on this project. We're all very much aware of. It's an incredible feat of engineering to be performed in a very narrow corridor that we all have to work, and there'll be some great interfaces that we have to overcome and work together with to successfully deliver this. And at this juncture, I'll hand over to Jennifer, who will talk you through the procurement element of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Hi there, my name is Jennifer Kirkley and I look after procurement for the Blackwell Group. I thought I'd start by listing out some of the contacts within our team. So firstly, there's myself, there's my contact details if anybody has any questions or queries after this, and you don't want to raise them on this call, then please feel free to contact me afterwards. I've also put down Gary Ward's contact details. He's our resource manager and he looks after all of the people and plant on the project. We've then got Richard Holman and Lisa Walt. Richard looks after the day-to-day ordering side of things for the non-plant purchasing, and then Lisa does the same but for the plant side of the project. So that team will develop and grow over the coming months, but that's us at the moment. So what I've done is I've listed out some of the contracts and preferred suppliers that we already have in place and some other potential opportunities which we have. So the majority of the plant is either contracted or we have preferred suppliers in place there. The site vehicles, PPE, consumables and fuel, there may be some other opportunities there which arise, and I'll talk through the process of looking at that shortly. Some potential opportunities we have then, we are currently looking for some labour agencies to work alongside. We're also looking for some small plant hire companies, some tyre management services, and we have just, this opportunity has just opened up, but with the lime and cement supply for the yellow brick road as well. So just to talk through the procurement processes then, as Chris has already mentioned, we add all of our tender opportunities onto the Compete For website and work through that process there. All the tenders are for projects specific for the HS2 project. However, we also look for suppliers potentially to be added to our wider group, as Justin mentioned, Blackwell are part of the wider Hargreaves group, and there is a potential opportunity to work for other areas of the business also. We have a supplier questionnaire that needs to be completed also, and that ties in with the supply chain assurance standard which EKFB have created. As Chris also mentioned, Blackwell are part of the Supply Chain Sustainability School, and we carry out monthly training sessions with all the procurement team, and we hope that we can push that out to the wider supply chain shortly as well. We've also created a supplier portal, and the portal holds all of the information that you would need to know to either become a supplier for Blackwell, or if you were already a supplier for us. It holds all of the details relating to all the day-to-day bits and pieces, so all of the delivery requirements and all of the expectations that EKFB and that Chris rolled out earlier on in this meeting. And then finally, just if anybody has any questions, but I think that we've covered that we were going to pick this up at the end, if that's okay with everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer and Justin. So who is next to take control?
It's morning, it's Colin Chambers. I'm the Managing Director of Waters. So hopefully I should be able,
and Kim?
I should be able to take control, hopefully. Is that the case?
Hi, Colin. In the menu bar at the top of the screen, there should be a box saying take control.
Take control. Yeah, I've got it now.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So good morning. Yeah, as I said, Colin Chambers. I'm the Managing Director of Waters, overseeing the section that we're working on. So I'll just give you a little bit of a brief history. If you don't know us, the Waters Group was formed by Geraint Waters, also known as Dye Waters, in 1982 to offer a heavy plant-based service in the surface mining and engineering sectors, predominantly in South Wales. During the 1990s, it started to grow more, doing local major regeneration works, then also into UK-wide infrastructure schemes. And then during the 2000s, along with starting our own residential and mixed use and renewable energy developments, we've grown into the largest national earthworks provider. Just to give you a little bit of an idea what the group also does, we're also, like I say, renewable energy. On the renewable energy side of things, we now operate 4 of our own wind farms and 2 large solar parks. We've got our own development lands, which is predominantly in South Wales, but also in the southwest of England now. Our offices stretch from Aberdare in Wales to Bristol and then across to Stratford-upon-Avon. And we've also got interest, which is predominantly via our chairman of horse racing and equine activities. On the plant side of things, we've now got around 600 main plant items, which gives us a capacity of probably in excess of about 30 million cube per annum now, which, like I say, probably puts us as the largest earthworks provider across the UK. On the EKFB section, we are working on the G2S section of C3, which is from Greatworth Tunnel up to Southam, which is about 24 kilometres in length. This has a quantity of around 14 million, 12 to 14 million cuts, but by the time you add all the rehandling into that, it's not far off 20 million cube of movement. The average haul that we've got is around, as you can see on the screen, 2.9 kilometres, but some of that materials will inevitably be having to move nearly 20 kilometres. Within the total cut, we've got around 1 million cube of rock that we're going to need to excavate and process, generally to a Class 1A, but that has to go in as ground improvement underneath the embankments, and that's the ones what we've got the longer length of hauls for. The programme of works is over a 4-year period, mostly. This has slightly moved as access has been slightly delayed, but that's across the whole of HS2. But there's 2 key earthworks years, which are going to now be 22 to 23 out of the 4 years, which will be moving somewhere in a region of about 7 to 10 million cube in each of those years. Just to give you a little bit of an idea of the plant that we have on there, I know this is quite small probably on the screens that you're looking at, but we're peaking there in 2023 with around 400 units on site. And to give you a bit of an idea, that gives you a total of about 230 articulated dump trucks, and most of those are 45 tonne. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of the size of what we're trying to achieve. So just really in summary, what we're doing is 12 to 40 million cubic cut in 4 years. Most of it we are self-delivering. We own and operate all of our own plant, but for the procurement side of things, and for you guys that are on the line at the moment, our supply chain operators predominantly will be ancillary earthwork plants, some of the smaller plant, maybe some that will take out the peaks and troughs. Soil stabilisation, there's a great need for soil stabilisation in the upper layers of the embankments. Processing the materials, like I said, we're going to be crushing over 1 million cube of rock over the next couple of years, mainly 22, 23, that'd be underway. There will be a requirement for maintenance of plant. As with everybody else, labour supply is going to be key for us, and also engineering services. Going forward, we will be looking at utilising the Compete 4 for all of these opportunities. And that's about it for me, really. As these slides will be going out, I'm sure the details of myself and our project manager will come out with it as well, which is Jason Moonchin. And he'll be the main port of call really going forward. So I think that's pretty much me done. Over to whoever's next. I think it's from Buckingham's, is it?
Yes, it is, yeah. I seem to have lost the slides again.
Yeah, I'll just reload them.
So just while Leon reloads the slides, my name's Angus Watson. I'm a chartered engineer and a construction director for the Buckingham Group contracting, and my focus is purely on High Speed 2. I'm currently project director for the Calvert North scheme, which has been mentioned earlier in the presentation. I'd just like to thank CECA Southern and EKFB for inviting us to present today as a strategic partner. I'm going to give you a quick background to Buckingham Contracting. I'll give you an overview of the Calvert project, and then I'm going to run through the subcontract opportunities that we have. Hopefully the slides will land before too long. Just to let you know,
Angus.
okay, the Buckingham Group is a multidisciplinary building and civil engineering contractor, and our head office is in Stowe, near Silverstone in Buckinghamshire, and we're located about 20 minutes drive away from the Calvert scheme. There we go. Is that working, Leon?
Yes, that's fine.
That's fine. Okay. So just a quick background into Buckingham. The company started in 1955. I can't actually see the slides too well because they've got very small on my screen. So we commenced trading back in 1955 as a plant hire company. In 1987, the Buckingham Group contracting was formed, and then that split off independently from the plant hire business. We achieved our first rail case in 2005, and we achieved a principal contractor license in 2008. In 2005, we were heavily involved in the Trent Valley 4 tracking. So we had involvement in widening the West Coast Main Line, and our stadium division built and completed the Stadium MK in Milton Keynes, which is home of MK Dons and the FA Women's National League. In 2011, we handed over 3 projects, which was the handball arena, now known as the Copper Box, which is a multi-sport venue at the Queen Elizabeth Park in London, the Silverstone Wing and the Amex Stadium, which is home of Brighton and Hove Albion. And then looking through there in 2017, we completed a mega shed, which was 1 million square feet. And then moving through 2018, we'd increased the group's turnover to 650 million. And then currently that's a shot there in the bottom right-hand corner of the Calvert scheme, which is a project which is worth over £100 million to Buckingham. We're involved in a number of divisions within the company. You can see there building, civil engineering, high speed 2, demolition, sports and leisure and rail. We're targeting a turnover of 650 million plus. with our building division being the largest division, about 200 million, and the civils and HS2 division about 135 million and currently 45 million respectively. We've got a capacity of around 70 million on High Speed 2 moving forward, drawing on resources from other divisions within the business. The sports and leisure side of the business does around 120 million per annum, and the rail sector does around 80 million per annum. This was a copy of the slide that Chris showed earlier, but that shows where we sit in the management structure on the High Speed 2 environment. So we're a tier 2 contractor reporting into EKFB, and then we've got tier 3 and tier 4 opportunities within our supply chain. This slide gives a quick overview of the location of Calvert. I think most people will have picked up on where it is, but it's just due northeast of Bicester, and it's the location where the East-West rail line will cross over the top of the High Speed 2. We've also secured a project on the East-West rail line, a multi-million-pound project on East-West Rail, which we're currently delivering in parallel with the Calvert scheme. This slide gives you a very good overview of what the Calvert area will look like once it's completed. And you can see there, running from the left to the right, is the East-West Railway line, which runs over the top of the High Speed 2 line, which runs from the bottom to the top of the page. There's around 4 million cubic metres of earthworks on the project. The High Speed 2 line is around 3.5 kilometres of cutting, and the East-West Rail line is around 3.5 kilometres of cut and fill. And then to the left of the screen, there's what will be an infrastructure maintenance depot. We're doing the earthworks for the IMD, but the actual depot itself doesn't form part of this contract. We've got 7 overbridges, 1 underbridge, and then you can see there that's a combination of single and multi-span steel composite overbridges and pre-stressed precast concrete deck overbridges. We've got a footbridge over the rail in one location, and we've got 6 quite significant culverts to divert watercourses, existing watercourses, into new alignments. There's around £2 million of demolition on the scheme, old farm buildings, some heritage buildings, bridges, depots, and hard standings. And we've got complex interfaces with EKFB's piling contractor. I think Andrew showed the piling at the East-West Rail Bridge earlier on. Well, Buckingham were responsible for that excavation and the pile platform preparation. Structural steel, precast beams and precast culverts are being supplied by EKFB to us for installation. And we've got around 1,300 metres of noise barrier, a similar quantity of fencing, 27 kilometres of drainage, and many new highway diversions and tie-ins. In terms of our procurement opportunities, I've listed out here all of the different packages that we expect to be procuring via our supply chain throughout this year and into next year. Some of the highlights there, the top one, the formwork and reinforcement, the FRC package. We've just let a first packet, or we're in the process of letting a package for the first 2 bridges, which is East-West Rail and Charndon Lodge. And we've got a number of bridge structures still to procure, along with the culvert installation and the head walls. There's a sheet piling package to provide ground support to structures. There's around 50,000 square metres of surfacing and with that, there's road markings and anti-slip for new highways and temporary compounds. There's around 2.5 kilometres of safety barrier across the site, 1,700 metres of fencing, close board, timber post and rail and security fencing, parapet installation for all of the bridges. We've got around 39 hectares of tree stump removal to carry out on the project, bridge expansion joint package, structural waterproofing, membranes. We've got a significant package of drainage to let, 25 kilometres of drainage of varying diameters and depths and types of pipes and manholes. So a huge amount of drainage to deliver on the project. We hope to be going out with inquiries on that later this year. Anti-graffiti coatings, bitumen paint, saw cutting, drain cleaning and CCTV. Plenty of scaffolding on the project to get access to all of the structures, and then further parapets and man-safe systems. And in a similar fashion to the other speakers on the project, we will be looking to receive expressions of interest on these packages through the Compete For platform. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
So thank you for all the speakers. I mean, that's quite an achievement, really. We've spent about an hour and got through 53 slides, and I think people have covered all the topics very well. We've now got around 25 minutes for Q&A, and that should be sort of based around all of the presentations we've had. So please put your hand up when you want to ask a question. Note, I didn't say if you want to ask a question. The guys have told us a lot and we're expecting some questions. One of the big things I took from this was Justin saying that there were lots of great interfaces in the in this sort of wider project. I'm not sure great would be the word I would have used for it, but there's plainly an awful lot of them. And yes, I think it's really impressive to see a project of this scale. I started my career working on the sort of tail end of the main sort of motorway building program, and this is sort of quite similar to that work. So I can't see any hands up at the moment, but perhaps I could just ask a sort of more general question. So if people were looking at sort of subcontract opportunities for drainage, if people were looking for sort of at the drainage type work, is there some sort of common procurement between all five of the organisations who've spoken here? Or would, you know, if you were doing a bit of drainage in different places, would you expect to go through a number of different procurements? I don't know whether perhaps Paul and Chris could help with this, or anybody else.
Thanks, Bill. I'll sort of kick off on that one. I suppose the sort of conduit to all the procurement is through Compete For. So, you know, we've got a contractual obligation to put all our requirements on Compete For, and we've stepped that down to the supply chain as well. So they're putting all their requirements on Compete For. And you obviously, I'm sure most people on the call will be aware, but you can obviously go in and register your interest in the HS2 project, and that will throw up all the opportunities for HS2 on drainage, and you'll get alerts to your inbox when something goes up. We're also looking at sort of having a bit more of a pipeline for these type opportunities. But to get back to sort of the original question, I think we will have our independent requirements for drainage as EKFB for the areas that we're self-delivering, and then the likes of Buckingham's, etc., will also have their requirements for drainage outside of that. Obviously, there'll be a lot of cross sort of fertilisation with regard to supplier names, etc. So we need to just make sure, as we're finding all the time on HS2, that we don't overheat the market and we manage capacity within the market. So there'll be that ongoing dialogue, but the intention is that we'll engage our procurement directly, and then we'll leave likes of Buckingham's to engage their sort of sub tiers directly.
Okay. Any
Yeah,
more?
Bill, in Buckingham, the 27 kilometres of drainage that we've got to do at Calvert North, we're waiting for further design information to come through for us to define the package properly. But the drainage work isn't due to start till the back end of this year or into early next year. But we are planning on going out to the market to get expressions of interest on the drainage package before we commence the actual procurement process.
Okay.
So it will be sort of early engagement really to get suppliers on board and interested in the scheme, and then working with a number of suppliers through a more detailed procurement process.
Great, thank you. There's a hand come up.
Hi there. Yeah, Angus, further to that sort of comment about you're sort of waiting for the final design or sort of developed design for the drainage. Does the same thing apply to the structures that you were talking about earlier?
I think our ability to procure the structures is probably that's further ahead. We actually have quite a mature supply chain for the structures. So we've already been out to probably 6 or 7 suppliers, and we've chosen one for the first 2 bridges. But we will be letting a second package for a further 3 bridges within the next few months. And then we will probably see how that goes and then work out how we want to procure the rest of it based on the success of the initial procurement.
Thank you, Angus. Can I ask another question while I'm here of Paul and Chris as to what the overview of the design provision is within the scheme?
With regard to
so the packages obviously have been sort of awarded to the 4 speakers we've had here today, or the 4 organisations we had here today. Where does the design for that particular work come from? Is that something that comes out of HS2 Centre or through your teams? So
no, that's a good point, Dave. No, we are responsible for design. We've got a design partner, the design joint venture, which is ASC, and yeah, they are responsible for all permanent design on the project.
Thank you.
Okay. So any more hands coming up? I think you're all very shy today. I'm very disappointed in you. I'd have really hoped you might have come up with a few more questions for the guys here. So can I just start?
Sorry, Bill, just coming back to that point on design, I think the procurement programme will be very driven by release of design at IFC issued for construction.
Yeah.
So obviously the design programme is a significant part of what we're doing, and it's possible that dates might move around to meet design. So the dates that we've shown are sort of that's what we're planning, but I think there's a lot to do in the background to be ready for that.
Okay, thank you. That's really interesting. So Eamon, thank you for putting your hand up. Could you ask your question now?
Yeah, sure. Thanks very much. Just a quick question on, obviously, looking at the media from the last few weeks, massive concerns on material cost increases, and also significant concerns raised about labour shortages as well. Someone is unskilled kind of labour. What kind of thoughts are you having between yourselves about how to mitigate or manage that?
Want me to chip in on the labour piece, Paul?
Yeah, okay, Chris. Yeah, you take that part, and I'll take the sort of material aspect.
Yeah, so in terms of labour, I mean, I guess EKFB got a two sort of pronged attack, and we recognise the risk in that market. We recognise the increased exposure as a result of sort of Brexit, etc. So we have gone for a procurement exercise to establish our blue collar labour desk. So we have 5 sort of labour providers that sit on that are providing a sort of integrated collaborative desk, and that they are working together to look how we tackle those issues. But at a higher level, there is a collaborative initiative that's been going on for some time now, which is led by HS2. It's the supply chain collaborative supply chain hub. So all the sort of supply chain leads across the MWCCs get together on a weekly basis, and they're looking at tackling where there are sort of capacity issues and things across the HS2 program. And one of the sort of initiatives that's just been kicked off is a labour working group. So where we have where we're using the same major labour providers across the program, we've got those guys now working together with us to basically engage the market and create collective sort of strategies and plans to go out and where there might be skill shortages and things, go out and run jobs fairs and things and see how we look to mitigate, address those issues. So early days, but yeah, there are lots of positive things happening in that space to try and avoid there being any real issues affecting the project.
And then with respect to the second part of my question, with respect to the concerns on cost increases, obviously British Steel announced this morning they're suspending taking any new orders for various steel members and that due to high demand. Are there working parties similar to what you're doing on the labour to can address those concerns? Because obviously you're going to be the biggest game in town once you get fully mobilised across the overall high speed 2. So is there any thoughts between yourselves as industry partners about how you might mitigate or manage that?
Yeah, I'll come in there, Eamon, if I can. Again, I think we see the supply chain collaboration hub as really being the conduit for managing that risk from a sort of program perspective. We need to speak to the industry as one voice as HS2 really, and we can't be trying to outmaneuver BBV, and BBV can't be trying to outmaneuver Align and SES. So we're trying to talk to the industry with a sort of joined up voice as HS2, so we can manage the risk as best we can. From a EKFB perspective, we again, part of our procurement and supply chain strategy was to engage a strategic partner for some of our structural steel work. So we've also already got the capacity for a lot of our structural steel work safeguarded, which is outside of British Steel supply. But obviously that message that's come out this morning is of a concern to the wider industry, particularly on a project such as HS2, where buying British is being promoted as much as possible.
Thanks very much for saying that. One last question, if I may, then I'll leave you alone. One of the concerns we have as a Network Rail kind of focused contractor is the timelines involved to bid. We could normally get very short nose durations. It's a huge long program, but then normally from a procurement kind of timeline, we might get very short nose, 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever it is, to respond to a tender event. One of the things I think, speak for other SMEs as well, is we're hoping that on high speed 2 we get slightly longer durations to provide value at a bid stage and to work with you collaboratively. If the timelines are too squeezed, you're probably not going to achieve that. So I just wanted for you to have a think about.
No, absolutely agree, Eamon. And if there's one thing that when you look at a program, we can cut the procurement duration down by X amount of weeks. That's the first thing that goes. So, but as I mentioned in my presentation, part of our EKFB's strategy and our processes, we have a balanced scorecard offering. So we're looking for submissions from the supply chain that aren't just purely price driven, and we recognise that for you to do that takes a period of time. So we should be giving you sensible time periods to bid for work. And again, I'd expect those requirements to be flowed down our supply chain as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the question. Thanks.
Could I just come in on those topics there? So, Eamon, on the labour supply, we've got in place in High Speed 2 a labour framework with 5 preferred suppliers for labour, and we're also able to sort of share labour requirements between other parts of the business. And in terms of procurement of suppliers, I think we recognise really that to get a supplier on board for a complex package of works, we need about 3 months. But fortunately at Calvert, we've got foresight of the programme. So we've developed some extensive procurement schedules, and we know when we need to start the process for each package to give it the time that it deserves to get those packages priced properly.
Very good. Excellent.
Thank you. So Dave, you have another question.
I do. Thank you, Bill. On the basis that a lot of the attendees here today are obviously self-deliverers in their own rights, and aim particularly at Walters and Blackwells, where you talk about sort of most of your work will be self-delivered, and then you would look at some other options that you would put out to the market. In terms of sustainability and in light of the pressures on supply chain across the piece going forward, would you consider changing your position a bit and opening up some of the work that you've got to self-delivery? Is that something you're allowed to do? Is that something that you would consider?
From our point of view, excuse me, microphone. It's not something that we've looked at this point in time, purely because it is all plant driven, most of our works, and the procurement of plant is put in place. But that's not to say if things change in down the line that we won't look to engage more. But it will predominantly be on the plant resources side of things, is from our side.
Good. Okay.
It's the exact same story from a Blackwell's perspective as well. I think there may be allowance to be able to sub within in the contract, but it's not something we've considered at this stage. We recognise that obviously labour will be a challenge, getting the drivers bums in seats, so to speak, and plant procurement and like everybody else on this call, we've started that process. The market's reporting that for plant hire, particularly or plant purchasing, it's going to be a very busy manufacturing period between now and deliveries for next year.
Thank you, Justin.
Okay. So are there any last questions? If you just have a think about what you want to ask. So I want to ask a question, and I have lined up I have asked this question before, but I feel it's very, very important. Are you going to use motor scrapers somewhere on this? Because I love watching motor scrapers work in a very sort of old-fashioned way. So you've all said you're the biggest muck shifters in the world, all three. Well, 2.5 of you have said that. So I want to know where the motor scrapers are.
We're as I alluded to within our section on G2S, the hauls are too long.
Yeah.
It doesn't. We'd love to be using scrapers, but with our average haul of not far off 3 kilometres, it just doesn't suit for the works that we've got to do, sadly.
Just not economical. We all love to see them at work, but we can't make them pay it on this particular element of the works.
There we are. You see.
Yeah, sad to say, but we don't.
Bill was getting all sentimental about scrapers, and you've ruined that for him.
Yeah, you have. It's all right watching them. It's when you're setting out for them and they drive over your pegs as fast as you put them in. But obviously, setting out has moved on as well, I suspect. So it's probably much easier now. Dave, you've put your hand up again. You're going to win the prize for the most questions asked.
Okay, it's not a question, it's just a commentary, really. Obviously, there was a lot of ground covered today. There will be the presentation sort of issued post the meeting, and there'll be a follow-up survey and a few other bits and pieces. But should you require any more information about what's been said today, once you've actually had a look at the presentation, then obviously you've been given contact details for each of the businesses concerned. Paul and Chris have sort of explained to you how you would be able to contact EKFB, but by all means come back to us, CECA, and tell us anything that you have that you'd like to speak to us about, or any other questions you might have that we can help with. So
good.
Back to you, Bill.
Okay, so I think we're going to wrap up at this point, and obviously we were all sat in a room somewhere like we used to in the olden days. We'd give a round of applause to the guys, because they've really done a sort of sterling tour de force of everything that's happening on the central section of HS2. But I think you can take it for granted you would have got a round of applause if you had been in the right environment, and thank you all very much. Thank you.